Welcome to Baseball Biz. I'm Mark Carpet, your host. And with me today, I have Mary Kitts. And I'm so glad to have her today because she knows so much more than me, especially on today's topic. And we're going to be talking about softball, and not just softball in itself, but looking down at what's going on with FSU. Mary, as a grad from Florida State, she, as I said, and a softball enthusiast, she has a mindset. She has an intelligence and awareness of softball that I can only wish to get to someday. What can I say? Hey, welcome, Mary. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I am doing fantastic. And as an FSU fan, pretty good stuff going on today too.
Yeah, we won our game, so that's always a nice way to end the day.
It's early in the season. What now? We've 5 games under the belt. We've been only 1 week.
Yeah, but we're 5-0, so that's always a great way to start the season.
Absolutely. And it started out with the draft series in Tallahassee, and you all played 4 teams there?
I believe so, yes. We played 4 teams, and we won all of those games pretty handily. So, the first one was 12-0 against Mercer. And so they did good work.
Well, I thought it was amazing, too, because I think I looked at the cumulative runs between, from all 4 games. I think FSU had 35. Was it right? 35 runs?
Around there, only 5 that were scored against them. So it was a pretty good defensive effort.
Jeez and crackers. I think anybody would love that number. Well, and it's not surprising because we're talking about a team that went to the Collegiate World Series for softball last year. That in itself is amazing. And this isn't the first time. FSU's been a real contender quite a few times, haven't they?
Yeah, they won in 2018. Pretty similarly to the way they almost won last year. They got into the losers bracket and had to win 10 games to get back to the top. And they did the same thing last year. Of course, they didn't win last year, but they came close.
That shows certainly not just a talent, but a willingness to put forth whatever it takes to get there. I mean, you don't come out of the losers bracket and come all the way back up to the top just by chance. That takes a lot of hard work from everybody.
Oh, yeah, they're pretty scrappy.
All right. Well, now that we've given the FSU their due, let's take a look back and see how they got there and what's going on with the rest of the team. So last year, we did mention that FSU did come to the finals of the World Series, and that was up against Oklahoma, wasn't it?
It was against Oklahoma. Oklahoma is a great team. They always are. Big home run hitters. So they were difficult to play against, and FSU is more of a small ball team. So it was interesting to see the 2 different types come against each other, but Oklahoma came out on top.
Well, I know, and I was sad to see that, but it made for some very entertaining ball as far as looking at some of those pitchers on both of those teams as the whole series evolved.
It did. And actually, our pitchers came back this year. So I'm not sure about Oklahoma, but I know we have Sandercock and Watson back again in the circle for us. So hopefully that will lend itself to a great season.
Well, Mary, tell me something here. I'm looking at this in the roster. There's things in softball that are going to be different, and they're going to be different in collegiate than what I think of normally with baseball. I think I was looking at a roster of as many as 25, 27 players on FSU's team this year.
Yes, they have a good amount of players. They have utility players. They have graduate students. Actually, that's how Watson is back. She's a graduate student because I think they have a greater eligibility in NCAA. And so they keep pretty stocked teams, which is good because you build a lot of experience that way. Last year, we had a bunch of people who had been on that original World Series team who came back and brought their experience with them. So, and this year we'll have the same thing if we manage to make it back because a lot of these girls went last year. So,
well, it's tough too when you think of one trying to carry that torch from 2018, but also because of COVID, there was a year really nothing went on. And
yeah,
what happened with those players? I mean, there was a lot of red shirts. I thought last year when I looked at the roster, and I guess they had to do that.
What happened with them? I think a bunch of them redshirted. But if I am remembering correctly, the NCAA gave players an extra year of eligibility if they missed that season. So people who were seniors were allowed to come back and finish playing their last year. I could be wrong, but I feel like I remember that they gave them an extended year of eligibility in case they were tapped out.
That makes sense. And I mean, it seems like that would be only fair. Uh, that year was weird. I mean, there was no baseball collegiate, there was no minor league baseball, and softball. I was so glad to see everything come back and seeing FSU looking strong again this year.
Yeah, and I think it's especially important because I mean there is a professional softball league, but it's not the same as baseball where a lot of these guys are going to go and make millions of dollars. For a lot of these women, this is the end of their career. So I'm glad that they got to have that last year to play.
You know, you and I talked about this before the show, actually earlier this week or last. And one of the things I look at in sports is at a collegiate level, how the fierce nature of some of the players, the commitment. Now, I'm not taking anything away from any other sports, but I think when I watch softball, the tenacity, the aggressive is probably not necessarily the nature I'm looking for, but the willingness to put forth everything into that game. And I think sometimes is it because they think, well, you know, this is it. This is collegiate. There's not anything past this. I have got to make my mark, and I got to make my mark for this entire team this year.
I don't know if it could be that, but I think in a lot of women's sports, but I know softball specifically, they just play with all out. I mean, in high school, it was the same way. In tournament teams growing up, it was the same way. Like everyone just kind of gives it their all because it's what you love.
Yeah.
And you're not trying to, I think a lot of it is you're not particularly trying to save yourself for a pro career. I mean, if that happens, it's nice, but for a lot of people, you're right, that is it. And so you're always putting 100% effort in.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to imply that they wouldn't otherwise, but I think there's probably something that just keeps it at the top of the mind the entire time and keeps a person fired up, maybe even a little bit more than you'd expect.
Oh, yeah. You'll see girls who have horrific injuries get back as soon as they possibly can, and they're not afraid at all. I think it was, I could be wrong about this, but I think it was Kalie Mudge last year who came back from an injury, and she was just on fire in the World Series. You wouldn't have thought that she had such a bad injury. She didn't let it keep her down.
I remember looking on TV and they showed her in the dugout at one point, and her eyes were the most piercing things. I thought, I would not want to be on the other side of that stare. But in some of the things, I can't remember the particulars either, Mary, but talking about her injuries, I'm like, good gravy, that woman came back from that and she's doing this now.
Yeah, I think she had like a knee injury and some like really bad back injury, something that was pretty intense that anyone else, they probably would have called it a day, but she just went through the rehab and came back to lead the World Series in hits. I mean, it was pretty impressive.
Well, I know as a fan watching it, I was as well. I thought, my gosh, if she can give her all like this, and as you were saying, just being able to come back this year, I think some people may have said, I'm going to put my cap up and hang it up out the door for the rest of my life after all those injuries. But her mindset is such that it carried her through. Yeah.
And I think that's pretty normal. I knew girls who got really bad injuries growing up, and the thought wasn't, okay, I should, be done. The thought was, how quickly can I get back? Like, is the season salvageable? Am I coming back next season? What's the deal? And that was always the mindset of all of my friends and all the people I grew up playing with. It was always, how quickly can I get back? And these girls are at an even higher level than what I did in high school. So of course that's where their mindset is. They're like, how can I get back? And what's the best way to get back?
Well, and that's something about the health of players. I want to kind of take a step off just for a moment here, because as looking at baseball, you're saying, okay, oh, look, they got a 300 batting average. That's fantastic. Now, if that was something in softball, I think they look twice at you and say, maybe they need to sit on the bench.
No, I think a 300 batting average is still pretty good for softball. I mean, so Florida State, that's a pretty good batting average. We're a small ball team, so, it's a lot of singles, a lot of just trying to advance to the base runners. We steal a lot of bases. That's one of our big things, and a lot of bunting. So people are going to get out. Their batting average isn't always going to be the best. On teams like Oklahoma is where the batting average is going to be a little bigger because they're hitting home runs and they're big bats getting up.
So those are where I'll see a 400 or 500 average for the team, and maybe even a player with 700.
Yeah.
And say, okay, where'd that come from? 700, because they're hitting them out of the park and the frequency. And that I'm kind of circled back from that because I'm thinking we were talking about injuries, and you think of something that big and hard being thrown out. The word soft kind of disappears when you think of the speed of that ball's coming at somebody.
Yeah, getting hit with a softball is not a joke. And
No.
people, they don't understand that a 67 mile an hour, 71 mile an hour softball pitch coming at you is the equivalent to like a 99 mile an hour baseball pitch, just
Yeah.
because of how close the mound is. And the ball is so much bigger. Getting hit by one of those things it's not a joke. You'll have a bruise that lasts for weeks. Some of the scariest injuries I've seen are a pitcher getting hit right back with a line drive and getting hit in the chest or in the face. That's why a lot of them wear those face masks. The ball moves really quickly in softball. There's not a lot of time for reaction. You kind of have to stick with what your first instinct is. And you have to, because otherwise you're going to get hurt.
Well, I said, I look at the folks out there and on the diamond, and I see that ball coming, like you said, 60 to 70 miles, whatever an hour. And I'm like, yeah, I do. I see those masks. Sometimes a pitcher will wear one. Sometimes they won't. But also, I guess the same for the batter. Sometimes I'll see them just with a helmet. But
yeah, that's weird to me because growing up, it was required.
Mm-hmm.
You had to wear a face mask. And for a long time, you always saw face masks because I've grown up watching the World Series. And there was a time when all the teams had face masks on. But it's been recently when they've kind of stopped. Some of them wear them, some of them don't. It's become a lot more popular for third base and pitchers to wear face masks than it was when I was growing up, which I think is good. Because, again, those balls are just coming at you fast.
Well, now that we kind of took a little bit of a look at the last year with the World Series, some of the teams that were playing here in the last week, here we come out, I think it's about 56 games or thereabouts in the regular season. So 4 or 5 games have been played thus far. What did you see as some of the top ones that people need to be looking
at? There was a really good game where UCF and Georgia was ranked 19, I believe. They went into extra innings and UCF came off with a walk-off win. I think it was 7-6. And so UCF is going to be one of those teams who didn't come into the season originally ranked, but that they're ranked now. I think they're number 24, and they're going to be someone to watch out for just to see if they're going to be able to upset anyone else. Other big games, UCLA and Oklahoma played. Oklahoma won that one, but it was pretty close. And those are two teams that are always great, and they're rivals because they always play each other in the World Series. It seems like. And then we have big games coming up this weekend at the Clearwater Invitational, where a bunch of top 25 teams are going to be playing against each other. FSU plays UCLA Sunday, and UCLA is number 3, FSU is number 5, so that should be a really good one. Interested because UCLA had Rachel Garcia, who was their ace pitcher, and she's not there anymore. So it'll be interesting to see who they have in the circle.
Yeah, boys and girls, if you haven't got your tickets for that, I think you're out of luck. I looked about a week ago, and it was sold out at St. Pete Clearwater Invitational. So I was really looking forward to maybe going to see the teams, but I'll try to find them somewhere else. Where are you able to watch the team?
You can watch on ESPNU. The UCLA FSU game I know will be on ESPN on Sunday. Some of the games will be on ACC Network. So it's all over a little bit. The big games are what gets played on ESPN. A lot of the other stuff usually gets relegated to ESPNU or ESPN Plus.
That sounds about right. And as long as we're talking about the games and when they're going to be played, last year during the World Series, there was some question about what I want to say, teams being either have a very short period between games. And do you remember the controversy about that?
I do. So for the Softball World Series, they have 7 days. It's the same amount of teams. I believe it's 8 teams that go in. And they're given only 7 days to get through. So what that means is if there's a rain delay, like there was last year, you have teams playing games until 2 or 3 in the morning, and then they have to wake up and be back the next morning to play a game. They have, 6 hours of sleep in between. There's no rest days. If everything goes perfectly, there's a single rest day. But unlike baseball, who gets 14 days, I believe, or 12 days, and so they get 2 or 3 rest days in between their games. and it's the same amount of teams. They bring in the same amount of viewers on ESPN. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense other than just that's how women's sports have been consistently treated.
Yeah, I don't get that either. As far as like expecting that of any athlete is just stupid. I'm sorry. I'll keep it simple. I think that's just ridiculous for those kind of expectations.
I agree. I mean, and I don't know how baseball works. I know for softball, that's pretty normal growing up when you're at these tournaments because you only have a weekend. So you're playing 3 or 4 games in a day, 2 or 3 games in a day. It depends on how things shake out. But when you're playing at the highest level, which is the College World Series, you should be taking into account that these are really, really great athletes who deserve the ability to rest and to have their minds in a better place than, oh no, I have to wake back up in 4 hours and go back out and do this all over again. Yeah. That's a lot of pressure, like an intense amount of pressure to put a bunch of 18-year-olds under, I think. And they should have more time to rest and recalibrate the same way baseball does.
Well, you'll get no argument from me on that. That's like I said, again, I think it just makes common sense to take care of your athletes and just to be a good human. If nothing else, how you treat folks. But oh my, well, walk me through a few other things. Well, since I'm constantly thinking from the baseball mindset, and I'm looking at pitchers, and they're going to be rotating in every 5 days in most cases. As far as in softball, what kind of rotation do you have with pitchers? Is it similar? Is it different? How is it?
I think it can be similar. I've never been a coach, so I don't really know the mindset for that. But I do know that if you need a pitcher, so unlike baseball, where usually you don't have a pitcher who pitches the full game, softball, that's nothing. A pitcher usually is pitching the full game unless something has gone wrong. Right. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that a softball pitch doesn't tire your arm out the same way baseball pitching does. And so they can go for longer. For really important games, you can start your starters back to back, but you want to save them usually. So I think it really just comes down to where you are in the season. If you are playing a really important game and you need to have your number one pitcher back in the circle, you can, because their arm is going to be pretty good to go. But I think there's a pretty normal rotation that goes through, and it just depends on gameplay. It's not quite the same as baseball.
Yeah, I hate to compare everything, but like I said, it's from my limited knowledge base. That's where I have to start from sometimes.
Yeah, it's just different. The pitching motions are different, so the arms get tired at a different rate. I was reading the other day about a pitcher, I believe from Texas, who pitched something like 1,400 pitches during the World Series that she was in, which is, that's insane, but also pretty normal for a softball pitcher to do something of that high volume.
Wow. I would never have guessed that. So that's astounding. And talking about astounding overall, though, looking at last year's World Series, you've got a sense, I guess, of who was doing well. They wouldn't have been there otherwise. Obviously, Oklahoma, Alabama was there, Georgia, but Arizona, Florida State, and Florida. Was Florida there as well?
I don't believe that Florida was there. No, I'm looking at the scores right now, and Florida was not there.
Yeah, and we're looking. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
James Madison was. They were kind of like the surprise that came in.
I always like a surprise team.
They're always exciting to watch.
Yeah. You want to see them climb up to a level, but just not where you're at.
They did great. They got all the way. They got through a bunch of rounds. They did really well. They beat Oklahoma State. They did really good.
Yeah, that's outstanding. Well, this year, we and I both were talking a moment ago about the rankings, and I'm looking right here at NCAA.com. Let's see, Mary, this is from February 13th. They've got the top 25 ranked. I think they're probably ranked by the coaches. Let's see, top 5, Oklahoma, no surprise there. Alabama second, UCLA, Florida, then Florida State. That's the top 5. And as you mentioned earlier, there's another Florida team in this top 25 as well. I think that was number 24, UCF. So you got 3 different Florida teams in the top 25. That's outstanding.
Yeah, softball's pretty big in this state. So, that's, and they recruit from all over the country, but it's big in Florida.
It's crazy too, because when I was looking at the roster of the players, I guess I shouldn't have been completely surprised. but I would say 20, 30%, at least 30% probably are from Florida, from some Florida high schools. Like, wow.
Yeah, it's big here. I mean, the tournaments I went to growing up were huge, and a lot of Florida teams. You would play against Georgia teams, Louisiana teams, and Alabama teams, but there's always enough to do to keep you busy in Florida.
Yeah, nothing like sunshine most of the year as opposed to say Michigan. I bet they don't have three teams going into it. Oh,
but Michigan is really good.
Yeah, let's see here. So looking this year, who's on your list? Who are you looking at and saying, hey, Mark, these are teams you need to watch? Which one should I be looking for?
Well, always Oklahoma, always UCLA. Alabama, definitely. They have Faust, who pitched a perfect game in the World Series last year, and she came back this year. So they'll be good. Florida, much to my chagrin, is always very good.
Boo, boo.
They're always very good. And they're ranked number 4 this year. Oklahoma State is a pretty good team. They actually 2 years ago knocked us out from going to the World Series. So in a 3-game series that we played in Tallahassee. So they're always really good. And then you have teams that are coming up. Michigan is 19, but I hold a soft spot for Michigan because I remember watching them in the World Series growing up. Texas will be good too. So, it's a lot of the teams that usually are pretty good, but they're pretty good for a reason.
Yeah, that exactly. There's consistency, and a lot of that has to do with coaching as well. FSU has had a great coach. She's done well with the team, and there's a history there with previous coaches also.
Yeah, Lonnie Alameda, she's very good. She's very calm. I've noticed when they're playing in these big games, which is I don't know how they're always, all these softball coaches are always so calm, but I'd be so nervous.
I'd be ripping my hair out and throwing my hat in the dirt and everything else to boot.
Yeah, she's great, and I believe she also coaches for the Canadian. She coached for the Canadian Olympic team, so she knows her stuff.
Well, I'm glad that FSU has the privilege of having her there, and glad that she's been able to do such great work with the team that she has. But
she built really good teams, so I'm glad she's there.
There's something else, as I mentioned, as far as the players for FSU, and I don't know if this is true. I think it's maybe true across all of the NCAA teams. I think you're only allowed like 11 or 12 scholarships. So while you may have a team you're on your roster as much as 26, 27 people, I believe there's only 11 or 12 that they can actually give scholarships for softball.
Yeah, and what that says about, the ones who aren't there even for the girls that are there on scholarship, but you have to really want it if you're not a scholarship player and you're willing to put that time and effort in.
Well, yeah, I agree with you 100%. And that's kind of where I was going with it too. But when we were talking earlier about the fierce nature of some of these people, it's like, guess what, boys and girls? Yeah, they're there to get an education, but that wasn't the sole draw. Their athleticism, their attitude, how they approach sports, that is what's making the difference. So I'm glad to see FSU do that this year. What else do we want to talk about here today? When I looked at some of the things going on last year after the season ended, the Oklahoma coach, is it Patty Gasso?
Yes.
She made some remarks about she was dissatisfied with some of the facilities that the players had there. I'm thinking, wait a minute, this is Oklahoma, and she's at her level, she's having some difficulties. What are some of the impediments that the players and teams have run into?
Well, they don't have showers.
What? What?
Yeah. There's only one field and they don't have showers. So they have to shower and get ready before they even come. They'll show shots of the bus and the players are getting off already dressed. They come game ready. Until recently, there were no bathrooms in the dugouts. One year they put porta potties in the dugouts, which was lovely. The tickets sell out right away. They've never had a problem filling the seats, but they don't have it. So baseball has about 22,000 fans that come, and softball has much less. It's a couple thousand. They upgraded to, I believe, 9,000 people, or it could only hold 9,000 people until recently. They added 4,000 more seats, and the tickets have immediately sold out. So it's not like people aren't trying to come to these games.
Yeah,
they could probably easily hold 22,000 people if they were willing to give them the stadium upgrades. There's a lot of interest in softball. A lot of people are very passionate about it. Like I said, it's bringing in as many viewers as the College Baseball World Series does on ESPN. And it's just the NCAA seems unwilling to put the money into it.
You think so many of these organizations are motivated by money, and you see that there's opportunity when a cup runneth over. When you're talking about people coming to the stadium, they need to have more room. They need to be able to bring those people in. Obviously they're making some money as far as broadcast rights because of the traffic and the people coming to watch that on excuse me, and for the people who are coming to watch that on television. But good gravy, people. Why are they moving so slow? And I don't understand. Of course, there's a lot of things I don't understand when it comes to management and sports.
True. It was very apparent last year when I couldn't watch. I was working my job and I couldn't watch the last game of the World Series because it was in the middle of the day because the schedule had gotten messed up due to rain. So, this sport that's bringing in a million views consistently gets shuffled around, and the only real reason I can come up with is that it's because it's girls playing, which doesn't make sense when it's bringing in the same level of interest.
Well, there's sexism, and then there's capitalism, and you think if anybody's a sexist, you think the capitalism would override that when they're looking at the dollar. That may be a jaded way to kind of look at things, but I'm dumbfounded about that. And when you were talking about the limitation of the facilities, and we're talking about Oklahoma, right? I mean, this is supposed to be the gem. This is supposed to be like where to go, the stadium, right?
It is the stadium, yeah. And so it's kind of crazy that they had to fight to get things like a bathroom put in the dugouts. Before then, the players had to run out onto the field down the third baseline and go into the stands to use the same bathroom that the fans were using.
That's
great. So it is Oklahoma is the place to be. It's like the heart of softball for the College World Series, but they need to be doing better. The NCAA needs to be investing more into it. They could expand the capacity of the field more than it's at. They could add in amenities like showers for the players so they don't have to get on the bus after a long 7 innings, and they can shower there and change there. Just simple things that baseball players get that softball players should also be getting.
I would not want to be sitting on a bus with other folks. I've been out there in the grunge from the sun for hours. And anyway, that's a picture we don't need to paint.
No, I've done it. It's not very fun.
No. But going back to Oklahoma for a moment, most people may not realize, but the World Series is been being held there every year. I think they've got a contract now through like 2030, 2035. I don't have it at my fingertips.
I believe. Yeah.
2035.
So, yeah, so Oklahoma and Oklahoma City kind of get home field advantage a little bit.
Yeah. And that doesn't play in any way at all with the series. I mean, the last 5 years has Oklahoma been in the World Series? They've won, I think you told me the other day, 3 out of 5 of the last World Series?
They've won a lot of them. And last year was, they have a very passionate fan base. Oklahoma. One of the great things that Oklahoma softball has going for it is the university seems to really put a lot of money and time into them because they're so good at what they do. And their fans are very passionate, and they all showed up for the World Series. It was a sea of red of Sooner Nation just for those 3 games.
No, like I said, if you guys haven't been following softball, you need to start. And I'm talking to baseball fans a lot of time on here, Mary, and the one thing over and over saying, okay, I don't know if they're going to have a season this year or not with all the arguments going on. So I've always pointed toward, collegiate games. The Olympic games. I've talked about college baseball. I've talked about the minor leagues. Actually, there's probably going to be a minor league season, but who knows when a major league season. But, come on, boys and girls. If you haven't watched it, and I did watch it this last year, if you haven't watched the Collegiate World Series, looking at women's softball, and certainly with FSU, because we're big FSU fans. Mary's graduate there. My son's a graduate there, and I love that team and love that town. If you're not doing this, shame on you. That's all I got to say to folks. You say a lot of it's on ESPNU and maybe on ACC and SEC channels.
Yeah, a lot of it on ACC, SEC networks. They do play games on ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU. It's just fun. It's a fast-paced game. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. They move real quick.
Well, I'll tell you what. Do you have anything else you'd like to talk about today with the folks?
I don't think so.
Well, that's Mary Kitts, and she's a softball enthusiast. She's FSU grad and certainly a big FSU fan. I don't know. Is there anything else we should make sure that people know about you, Mary?
No, I think that's all they need to know.
I agree. So FSU fans, that's what it's all about. So I'm really glad you were willing to come and share your expertise with us today and your appreciation of the game. So thank you very much, Mary. I'm glad to have you here today on Baseball Biz.
Yeah, thank you. It was a lot of fun.
All righty. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks again for listening to Baseball Biz. And we'll be here. You can find us also on Spotify. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, wherever there's a podcast directory, you'll be able to find us. So once again, thank you for joining us here today, and talk to you soon, Mary.
All right, thank you.
Special thanks to X-Take RUX for the music Rocking Forward.